My name is Ethan Cole, and this story doesn't begin with revenge, it begins with love. The kind of love that only a father can give. The kind of love that doesn't come wrapped in fancy words or grand speeches. My father, George Cole, wasn't a man of many words. But his hands told stories, scarred, calloused, stained with oil from the hundreds of engines he fixed in his lifetime. He was a mechanic. A small-town man. And he was my hero. We lived in Ashwood, population barely 9,000. The kind of town where you still wave to strangers, and everybody knows who fixes whose truck. My dad ran Cole's Auto, a shop passed down from his father. To most, it was just a rusty building with a crooked sign. But to me, it was a temple. A place where I learned more about life than I ever did in school. Growing up, I didn't realize we were poor. We didn't have vacations, no new clothes every season, and we sure as hell didn't eat out. But I never felt like I lacked anything. My father made everything feel full. He worked long days, came home tired, yet always found time to ask about my day, even if I had nothing to say. My mother died when I was 10. From that day on, it was just the two of us and the garage. But this story, it isn't about a happy childhood. It's about what happened after. When I left town at 22 to study mechanical engineering in Chicago, I had dreams of building something bigger, something lasting. Dad supported me fully, even though it broke his heart. I would visit every few months, and every time I returned, the town looked smaller, quieter. Ashwood was changing, and not in a good way. Enter Nathan Graves. You know the type. Expensive smile. Designer suits. Greasy handshake. Born into money, running his father's construction empire, and now trying to modernize Ashwood. He didn't grow up here. He didn't care about the community. All he saw was land and profit. Nathan began buying up properties, promising jobs and development. Shopping centers. Condos. A new sports complex. And in the middle of it all, sat my father's garage. A stubborn old building that refused to move and a man who refused to sell. I remember the call I got from Dad. He said, this man, Nathan, he came in like he owned the place. Offered me 6 figures to leave. Told me I could retire. But I'm not leaving, Ethan. This garage is all I've got. It's all your mother left behind. I told him I supported whatever he decided. I had no idea what was coming next. A few weeks later, the town held a public forum. Nathan was pitching his Ashwood renewal project, dozens of properties to be cleared and turned into luxury spaces. The town hall was packed. Hundreds of residents. Local news. Council members. Cameras rolling. And in that room stood my father, wearing his work shirt and baseball cap, grease still on his hands, heart still full of pride. When it was his turn to speak, he stepped up to the microphone and calmly said, I've been in this town longer than Nathan Graves has been alive. I've fixed your cars, your trucks, your school buses. This garage, it's not just a shop. It's history. My wife and I built a life here. I'm not against progress, but not at the cost of our roots. Silence. For a second. And then Nathan took the stage. What he said next will never leave me. He smiled, that smug, rehearsed smile, and leaned into the mic. I think we can all appreciate nostalgia. But folks, it's time we accept reality. This isn't a movie. This is business. We can't let sentimental junkyards hold us back. Mr. Cole, you've done enough. It's time to step aside and let this town grow. Laughter. From the back of the room. Applause. From Nathan's investors. And my father? He stood still. Didn't respond. Didn't even blink. He just lowered his head and walked away. Out of the hall. Out of the camera's reach. Out of their world. I saw the clip on YouTube. My hands were shaking. I had never felt rage like that before. They didn't just insult a man, they erased his lifetime of dignity in 30 seconds of public humiliation. And I wasn't there. I flew home the next morning. Dad tried to pretend everything was fine. He kept working. He said, "People forget. It's not worth getting worked up about." But I could see it in his eyes. The man who once stood unshaken before roaring engines and broken axles now avoided his own reflection. That's when something broke inside me. That's when I realized this wasn't over. Nathan Graves thought he humiliated my father in front of the town? I didn't return to Ashwood as a son. I returned as a storm, quiet, brewing, and unstoppable. After that humiliating town hall, my father refused to talk about what happened. He went on fixing tires and changing oil like nothing had changed. But something had. Not just in him, in me. I had always been taught to forgive, to rise above hate. But sometimes, there's a wound too deep for peace. Sometimes, revenge isn't about anger, it's about restoring balance. Nathan Graves thought he'd won. That my father's silence meant surrender. He was wrong. In the first week back home, I played my role perfectly. Smiling, helping in the garage, sharing dinners with Dad. But at night, when the town slept and the garage lights dimmed, I turned into someone else. Someone sharper. Someone hungrier. My plan wasn't simple. If I wanted to destroy Nathan Graves, I couldn't just fight fire with fire, I had to drown him in silence. I had to tear down his empire, not with violence, but with facts, with patience, and with precision. So I started with research. Nathan's company, Graves Developments, owned over 30 commercial properties in our county alone. I dug through public records, permits, tax filings, business registrations. I wasn't just looking for dirt. I was looking for cracks. Patterns. Anything out of place. And I found it. 2 shell companies, Elk Ridge LLC and Golden Main Holdings. Both listed the same P.O. Box address in a neighboring town. Both owned by someone named N.G. Enterprises. It didn't take long to confirm they were fake, used to secretly purchase land and shuffle funds. Classic laundering move. Illegal? Technically, yes, but hard to prove. That's where Claire Monroe came in. Claire had been the only local journalist who questioned Nathan publicly once. A piece she wrote 2 years ago about unethical zoning permits had mysteriously vanished from the paper's website. She was fired shortly after. I found her working at a tiny law firm, bored and overqualified. When I walked into her office, she looked up and said, "I know that face. That's a revenge face." I smiled and said, "I want to bring Nathan Graves down." Want in? She didn't hesitate. Absolutely. With Claire on my side, we had 2 weapons, truth and reach. I would gather the evidence, and she would publish it where it hurt most. We started small. A series of anonymous leaks on local forums, complaints from former Graves employees, whistleblower quotes, suspicious contracts. People started to whisper. Doubt began to spread. Then, I moved on to the business side. I created a fake investment firm, Stonebrook Capital. Website, documents, even a fake assistant named Melissa who answered emails with AI. Through this fake company, I contacted Graves Developments with a proposal to partner on a luxury housing development in North Ashwood. To my surprise, Nathan himself replied. Greedy. Desperate to expand. Our meetings were virtual. He had no idea who I was. I let him do the talking. Bragging. Pitching. Lying. But every word he spoke, I recorded. Every fake claim. Every illegal promise. By the end of the 3rd meeting, I had enough to ruin him. But I wasn't done yet. I needed him to feel it. So I took it further. I offered a massive down payment for the project, wired from an account I had set up just for this moment. The money was real, but traceable. As soon as he accepted it, he was legally implicated in a fraudulent interstate business deal. Now the noose was tightening. Meanwhile, Claire was publishing a slow-burning series called The Graves Beneath Us. Every week, a new article. How Graves pushed elderly homeowners into selling. How his contracts bypassed safety inspections. How his luxury towers were filled with cheap wiring and rushed labor. His image was cracking. His campaign for mayor, once backed by powerful investors, now smelled like a sinking ship. Then I struck a personal blow. Remember that video from the town hall? The one where he mocked my father? It had barely 400 views, buried on the city's official website. I downloaded it, clipped it to 20 seconds, added subtitles, and posted it anonymously on TikTok under the title, "Millionaire Humiliates Working Class Man in Public. Ashwood Deserves Better." It blew up. 1.2 million views in 3 days. Suddenly, everyone was talking about it. Reddit threads. Facebook shares. Memes. Nathan became that guy, the smug developer who bullied a local hero. And my father? He had no idea any of this was me. One night, he sat watching the news and saw Nathan's face with the headline, "Ashwood Rising Star Faces Financial and Ethical Allegations." He looked at me and said, "Think he finally got what he deserves?" I shrugged and said, "Maybe karma's real after all." He chuckled, but his eyes lingered on me longer than usual, like he knew something he wasn't saying. I didn't stop. Over the next few weeks, I anonymously alerted the IRS to the shell companies. I leaked recorded calls to regulators. Claire's articles were now being picked up by bigger outlets. Nathan tried to fight back, with PR campaigns, lawyers, even threats. But he didn't know where the attacks were coming from. His world, his carefully crafted empire of arrogance, was crumbling. And then came the moment I'd been waiting for. The city announced a public debate for the mayoral candidates. The same stage. The same town hall. The same crowd. And I bought a front row seat. Nathan walked on stage, less confident than before. No investors in the back. No clapping. When it was time for audience questions, I stood. He saw me and froze. For a moment, I wondered if he'd recognize me. But I wasn't the boy from 5 years ago. I was the man who took everything from him, piece by piece. I took the mic and said, "My name is Ethan Cole. My father is George Cole. You humiliated him here years ago. And now I want to ask, what do you have to say to the people you claimed were holding this town back?" Gasps. Cameras turned. Journalists leaned forward. Nathan looked at me. And for the first time, he had nothing to say. No charm. No spin. No grin. Just silence. And in that silence, I heard justice speak. When you spend years building something in silence, no one sees you coming. And that's exactly how I wanted it. Nathan Graves, once the untouchable golden boy of Ashwood, now stood on stage, sweating under the lights, choking on the silence I had forced into his lungs. The debate crowd watched in tense disbelief as he stared at me, unable to answer a simple question: what do you have to say to the people you claimed were holding this town back? He blinked. His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. Then someone in the back laughed. It was a strange moment, not cruel, just full circle. Because once, years ago, they laughed at my father as he stood there, quiet and alone. But now, the same silence that once humiliated my family was devouring Nathan from the inside out. And I wasn't done. The next morning, I launched the final phase. Everything I had collected, recordings, fraudulent contracts, leaked financials, employee testimonies, was submitted directly to the State Attorney General's office. Claire used her growing platform to publish a bombshell report titled, "The Empire of Sand: How Nathan Graves Built His Fortune on Fraud and Fear." It spread like wildfire. By noon, the mayoral debate clip had gone viral. TikTok, Reddit, YouTube Shorts all flooded with headlines. "Corporate bully finally gets what's coming." Mechanic's son brings down corrupt millionaire. Ashwood's real hero? Ethan Cole. My inbox overflowed. People I hadn't spoken to in years sent messages like, "Was that really you? I can't believe it." But I didn't care about the attention. I didn't want applause. I wanted closure. And I got it 3 days later. A team of federal investigators raided Graves Development's downtown office. Staff were escorted out. Boxes of files rolled into vans. Nathan's face, once smug and glowing on billboards, now looked pale and hollow as cameras caught him being driven away in the back of a black SUV. I watched it all on TV from my father's living room. He sat beside me in silence, hands folded. Then he looked at me and asked, "You didn't have anything to do with this, did you?" I smiled. Not a smirk. Not cocky. Just honest. "I did everything, Dad." He didn't say anything for a while. Just nodded slowly. His eyes glassed over, and I thought maybe he was angry. But then he said, "You didn't have to." I replied, "I know. But I needed to." That night, I visited the old garage. The place where it all started. The walls were cracked, the smell of oil still thick. My childhood was in every creak of that floorboard, every dented tool. I walked to the corner, where a rusted locker still bore a sticker, "George's shop, no complaints, just wrenches." I pulled open the locker, found an old photo of my mom and dad on their wedding day. I sat there, on the cold concrete floor, holding it. And I cried. Not tears of rage. Not relief. Just release. Because it was over. Nathan Graves was charged with multiple counts of fraud, wire transfer violations, and illegal property acquisitions. His political campaign ended overnight. His properties were frozen. Investors filed lawsuits. He lost everything, slowly, exactly how I planned. But unlike him, I didn't do it for power. I did it because my father was the kind of man who would never fight back. So I did it for him. Film frames a month later. The city held a public ceremony, a rare event, meant to honor longtime contributors to Ashwood's identity. To my surprise, they invited my father to speak. He wore his best shirt, the one Mom ironed for every church picnic. He still looked a little uncomfortable being in front of a crowd, but this time, the crowd loved him. When he stepped to the mic, they applauded before he even opened his mouth. He said, "I didn't build anything special. I just fixed what was broken. Cars. Tractors. Sometimes hearts. I never asked for recognition. I just wanted to be useful. But I raised a son who saw dignity where others saw dirt." He reminded this town that pride isn't loud. It's earned quietly, with grease-covered hands and long days. And I think maybe that's worth something. The entire hall gave him a standing ovation. I stood in the back. Hands in my pockets. Eyes wet. Heart full. For the first time in years, I felt peace. Brick 1 year later. The garage has a new sign now. Cole and Son, Community Auto and Trade School. We still fix engines, but now we teach too. High school kids, veterans, single moms, anyone who wants to learn how to build something with their own hands. Claire teaches a journalism class in the evenings. Dad still shows up every morning at 6 a.m. sharp, coffee in hand, as if nothing ever changed. And me? I'm not the angry son anymore. I'm the man who made sure my father's story didn't end in shame, but in respect. People often ask if I ever ran into Nathan again. Once. In court. He looked thinner. Paler. A different man. He didn't say a word. Neither did I. Some things don't need words. Speech balloon final voiceover monologue. Revenge isn't always about fire. Sometimes, it's about rebuilding what they tried to destroy. Not just buildings, but names. Legacies. My father never asked me to fight for him. But he fought for me every day of his life, quietly. So I fought for him, loudly. And now, every wrench turned in that garage, every young mechanic who walks through those doors, is a monument to the man they once tried to humiliate, but couldn't. It's been nearly a year since Nathan Graves disappeared from Ashwood. No press releases. No redemption tour. Just, gone. His properties auctioned. His name removed from campaign signs. And the town, it moved on. But I didn't. Not because I was still angry, or bitter, or broken. But because revenge doesn't disappear the moment you get it. It leaves something behind, a silence. Not empty. Just, still. Some nights I sit outside the garage, now called Coal and Son, and just listen. No engines, no hammers, no shouting. Just the wind passing through what we rebuilt. Dad doesn't talk about Nathan anymore. He doesn't have to. He talks about the new students, the single mother who just learned how to change her oil. The kid who failed high school but rebuilt his first transmission last week. That's where his joy lives now. Not in victory, but in usefulness. As for me, I thought revenge would fix something deep inside me. That bringing Nathan down would undo what he did. But I've learned. Revenge doesn't undo. It just replaces. It replaces shame with dignity, pain with purpose, silence with strength. Still, it comes with a price. I lost sleep, time, pieces of myself I may never fully get back. But would I do it again? Yes. Every step. Because the world may forget the quiet man who fixes their cars. But not on my watch. Headphone final voiceover monologue. In the end, revenge wasn't about watching him fall. It was about lifting the man who raised me back to the place he always belonged. Not in the shadows, but in the light. They tried to bury him in silence. But I made sure the world would hear his name again.